Okay, so I am live. So, welcome to our understanding of Mars in astrology. Okay, and this is very interesting because, especially once you know about just zodiacs and planets, you know, I would probably say one may not even used to use nakshatra. And of course, right now, as you know, on KRS blogs, I've uploaded 4 parts to Secrets of Ascendance, where you can see a blank chart and you can see the foundational predictions. The real fine-tuned one, if this happened or not happened, you'll have to see from the planets, but it's so simple. Guys, it's really simple to understand these things. So it's on KRS blogs on the link in the description at thinkific, KRSchannel.thinkific.com. So today we're talking about Mars. Okay, so in order to kind of understand Mars, okay, you have to also understand certain dynamics in our nature. Okay, for example, Mars truly, okay, so in most astrological books, Mars has been given the significance of brothers, courage, power, energy, energy source, fire, anger. Okay. But then once you include, let's say, Vastu, okay, there's a very important thing that comes out with Mars when you actually understand Vastu itself. Is that Mars, which direction is Mars in Vastu? It's south. South direction is controlled by who? Yama. And what does that signify? It signifies your Pitris, your ancestors. So once you read most of the text, but then you also start understanding that, okay, why is Vastu giving, south direction, which is controlled by Mars, to Pitris? And then you understand that southern direction, which represents death, recycling of the soul, the transmigration of the soul, death, rebirth. Okay, that is controlled by Mars. Why? Because in the true zodiac sign, it's so simple. Mars rules the ascendant, the first house, Aries, known as Dhiyakarka. This is why Mars is Dhiyakarka, the significance of the body. But then what else Mars rules? It rules the 8th house with Scorpio. And this is where Mars becomes dual natured. Dual nature, even though Scorpio is a fixed sign, it's not a dual sign. But here Mars possesses dual nature. It takes away something, then it brings something. It brings something, takes away something. So if you see number 8, the number 8 represents this recycling, right? So Mars represents this force of death and rebirth. This is why also in certain Nadi texts, Nadi books, and I've actually shared one of the greatest books on KRS blogs about past life and pending karma, and you'll find so many techniques in there. You'll be like, oh, I've heard this. Oh, I've heard this technique. Oh, I've heard this technique somewhere. And that, and especially written by one of the greatest people I knew in my life, A.V. Sundaram. And like my conversation with A.V. Sundaram, and I'm just disheartened that he passed away, because I was planning to come to India in a couple of years to meet him. Not to do some kind of like a show or anything, because I'm going to come there, visit family, and then go to Banaras and Varanasi and just meet sages and gurus. But there you find out that Mars, because it's the significator of the blood, right? Mars represents blood. And so this is why it also represents ancestors, because it is representing the blood of the rishis coming through, the 7 rishis coming through. This is something even Sanjay Rath, when he first time he came to my channel, that's where he also said that we all have the blood of the rishis in our veins. So Mars becomes important in that sense. Okay. Mars, that's one of its significance. Now, one thing to understand in a horoscope, if you really want to understand Mars, okay, whenever you see the sign of Aries, wherever you see the sign of Aries, this is where your energy is going to be spent in. That's where your energy is going to be spent in. Most of your energy, most of the power grid that you have here, where is the source of this power grid being spent on? It's going to be spent on that sign of Aries. And so if you look at it, let's say if you look at just Taurus ascendant. For Taurus ascendant, Mars rules the 12th house. Most of their energy will go towards foreign travels, pet pleasures, and focusing on spiritual spiritual path at a certain age. If you look at, Libra ascendant, most of the energy of this individual will be spent on public life, wanting to be something important in public, wanting to devote their time to the marriage or relationship if they're married. Okay. So this is where the entire power of, Mars will go. And so you can, and then this is the same way you will look at the dual nature of Scorpio for Mars. Okay. This is where that transmigration of karma has come into play with Mars. So that's if you just understand these two things, you'll understand basically pretty much the whole astrology. Okay. Now, one thing that we also say about Mars, what else do we say about Mars? Mars is a significator of debt. Okay, Mars is a significator of debt, because it's the karaka of the 3rd and 6th house. So that means debt being the 6th house, okay, debt being the 6th house. What is also the 6th house? 6th house is also your pending karma. So along with the Mercury, Mars becomes that significator of the pending karma. So one way you will look at it to understand the debt that Mars wants you to pay, because Mars is going to be very strongly, signifying that, because it's the karka. Remember, it is the significator of the 6th. So in that case, you will see 6th from Mars. Just like I told you how to see 3rd from Jupiter, 9th from Jupiter, okay, 3rd from Saturn, which I put on my KRS blogs as well. 6th from Mars will represent also one of the debts that your energy is going to be going into paying. That is going to be a very, very important thing. Guys, don't do any super chats. I won't have time to do any super chats. Don't do any super chats, because I know I will have to leave. I was trying to do this yesterday, okay, this Mars, and then something kept coming up. Now, why am I doing it today? Now look at this fact. here's another thing. So Mars is in Gemini right now, right? Here I am communicating regarding Mars. But also if you see, Moon and Rahu are sitting in the sign of Mars. Moon is in Scorpio. So that means now the consciousness of the mind is somehow wanting to deal with hidden knowledge, secrecy, occult. Rahu is in Aries. And this is why then Rahu and Moon will make a connection. Okay, they're making that connection with Mars. So one will speak of energy. One will make a link with Mars in this time. Okay. But what was I talking about? So 6th from Mars, look at anybody, look at your chart. Wherever 6th from Mars is, you'll feel like, I got a responsibility here. I gotta do something here. Universe is making me do something here. Okay. Mars in the 4th house. If you have Mars in the 4th house, one will have to give debt to the father. One will have to either serve the father, and one will have to, regardless of how the relationship is, one will have to deal with the father or a guru or a teacher. Where it's not where the energy is going. That's Aries sign, unless 6th from Mars becomes the Aries sign. But 6th from Mars represents the debt that your ancestors are wanting you to pay. Because remember what I just said, Mars rules the southern direction. Okay, it's not Rahu ruling the southern direction, which we also known as your Pitris. It's neither Jupiter. It is Mars. Now, of course, if you read one of the A.V. Sundaram's book, 9th house is actually your Pitris. 9th house becomes your past. And 12th from Jupiter becomes your past. If you read this one great book, it's like a 700-page book. 12th from Jupiter is your past life. And then present is the placement where Jupiter is, or as a present is the ascendant, the Lagna. Future is the 5th house. So this is why Mars actually represents your present karmic debt. Saturn is the karma that you're doing. Okay, so Saturn is something from past life that you're going to be somehow doing in this life. That's fine. Okay, we get it. Maybe Saturn is in Scorpio and you're doing some research-based work, detective work, you're working in government treasury, or you're an astrologer and occultist yourself, fine. But the debt of the Mars, the 6th from Mars, has to be paid, because when that is paid, that is actually one big karma, because now you're satisfying the ancestors energy. What do they call it? Shrad, right? Pitrupak Shrad. You're satisfying that energy 6th from Mars, because now it's not just your debt. It's not just your debt that you're taking care of. It is the debt of your ancestors. So this is why it is so important to do these things. So for example, you will see, take any chart. Mars is in the 12th. You're gonna have to pay the debt to the children. You will have to, give yourself, your energy. Your energy is going to be divided. The main energy where the Aries is, and 6th from Mars is going to be that. And the thing is, naturally, you will see, it's not your mind, it is the Pitris who are telling you, hey, focus on that 6th from Mars. Focus on that 6th from Mars. Mars is in the 2nd house. One will always wanting to either do business. One cannot stay single. If one is single, they'll be like, okay, how do I find a relationship? How do I find a relationship? Because 6th from Mars becomes the 7th house. 2nd from Mars also desires for public life. Okay. Now you add, you know, zodiac sign and all that, but that's a more of a secondary thing. Okay. Now, of course, I mean, I can use other planets, but then I don't want to say certain things here on YouTube, you know, because a lot of people watch, some people who are sensitive, some people who are not. Again, please, no super chats, please. Today I won't have the time to do super chats. And I just lost my train of thought. But now, Mars, okay, Mars represents brother. So look at any planet surrounding Mars. Just like I told you in Jupiter, see planets surrounding Jupiter, around Jupiter, making link with Jupiter. Now see planets surrounding Mars. If let's say Mars and Sun are together, you will see either a brother or a male friend, or maybe even a neighbor will be working and gaining through government. Depending upon the sign, brother will fight with father. Okay. And if let's say Mars and Mercury are together, Mars and Mercury make a link. One will have fights with maternal aunts and uncles, cousins. Yet this is also the combination of person who becomes very good in logic, statistics, law. And actually they make the greatest astrologers. Mercury and Mars, when they make a link, they make the best astrologers because it requires discernment and logic. As much as astrology is intuition, which is the last part, it is like that spark. Intuition is very important in order for an individual to really understand. It's like you can know all the techniques, okay? But then the Rishi said, well, there's this, it's like Steve Jobs. There's one more thing. Then the Rishi says, there's one more thing. You've got to develop your intuition so the planets speak to you. Do you know how this intuition works? We talk about, oh, this person is very intuitive, is very psychic. Whenever a person who has developed, who has pretty much, awakened their Jyotish Nadi, which is pretty much awakening the Shushana, when they look at a chart, they will see a house with a different color, red color, let's say fourth house red color. And then Mars will become active. Mars will suddenly pop up from the chart, and nobody else can see that except this person. Just like a bird, a fly looks at the world in their own way. When a human being develops intuition, they will look at something different way. So when you look at a chart, boom, fourth house, this, and they may see, let's say, Venus with Mars being there dripping down and say, oh, accident happened in the home. They'll have a number pop up, 23. Oh, it happened at 23rd year. Once you get this, of course, then you don't even need Jyotish. You look at a chart and you just know the basic, you'll start saying things. Please, you understand this today. That somebody can give you, like I can give you all the techniques, but if you don't have something developed here, you'll fail in those techniques. You'll fail in those techniques. Okay, so Mars Mercury conjunction makes a great astrologer, like a lawyer who investigates things, who goes into things. But of course, is that Jupiter and Shukra's blessing that have to be there for those things to be analyzed. You will see, especially if in a female's chart. Now, one of the things that I don't agree with, even though it's written in certain Nadi texts that Mars is the husband, okay, and Jupiter is the karka of marriage for a female. But the thing is, I'm sorry, Mars cannot produce children. It is Jupiter who produces children. A female, majority of the time, will only look for a person who's capable of giving her a family and not run away. Doesn't matter if it's modern or not. Unless we're no longer producing children, and we don't need to. Children are coming now from a vending machine. Like it takes your blood and it takes your partner's blood and say, okay, here's a token. Come back tomorrow, it'll be ready. Okay, then you are talking about Mars as the spouse. But till we get to that point, which I think we will, Jupiter has to be the significant. I think use Mars as the attraction, the boyfriend. Don't use Mars as the spouse. That's something, again, because when I look at things, because I have so many charts in my database, I know what someone's husband is doing, what someone's wife is doing. And when I'm looking at that relating with Mars, it clearly relates with Jupiter. Mars is, yes, they would have said, yes, I dated this person who was on a motorcycle, I dated this person who was a mixed martial artist, but I married a banker. Okay, so this is why, so be careful on those parts. The other thing, it's so important when you look at Mars. So for example, people are like looking at Mars in Virgo, Mars in Pisces. And they're like, oh, this person has a very feminine energy. This person is very polite. And boy, can you be wrong. Can you be wrong? What you have to understand, and this is where now the connection of birth to Navamsha comes into play. First of all, you see Mars. Okay, let's say you see Mars in Pisces. And you're supposed to say something about either this person is extremely masculine, take charge, or is this person just like subservient and very feminine in nature, very polite in nature? You see Mars in Pisces, but what you fail to then see is who's around Mars. Okay, so if let's say Mars is in Pisces, but then before that you have Rahu sitting 12th from Mars, there is hidden aggression. There's a hidden cunningness that may come into this particular Mars. And then you then take that Mars and look into the Navamsha. How this person is going to be executing this Mars. And even if Mars is still in a fire sign, fine. Look at who's impacting Mars. If let's say now Ketu conjoins Mars, Saturn goes second from Mars, so Saturn is not trying to progress its energy towards Saturn. Okay. You could see this person actually going into field of being a police officer, going into army because of Ketu. This person may just fight people. So never judge, and even though we do, like I'm doing planets and through ascendants, Mars in this sign, Mars in that sign, this, you have to know these foundational levels. You can't just start learning astrology from like the 20th level. You do have to go back to the first level and then progress. But remember, it is when you progress, when you get to this point, you have to use this. You will understand what Mars is doing in Pisces. Okay. Brother will probably settle in foreign lands. One will, so if let's say you're looking at Pisces, okay, you can clearly then see that one will have debt to pay to children, students, okay, and regal individuals. One may be serving under regal places, royal places, places of prestige. And of course, with Mars and Pisces, one will be very quick with their feet. So and you can look at all of these things. You know, Mars represents land, right? If it's in Pisces, at one point a person will purchase some piece of land near water or near some spiritual monastery. This is how you can easily connect then with Mars. But whenever you're judging Mars, so, you know, if you, let's say Mars in Aries can bring extreme anger, I mean ferocious anger. But now let's say Mars is in one house, Jupiter is right next to Mars. Okay. And then Mars in the Navamsha goes into, let's say, a earth sign in the Navamsha. And while it's in the, or let's say Mars is exalted in Navamsha. Okay, it's in Aries. And then it finds its exaltation in the Navamsha. Okay, and then there it's being aspected by Jupiter. Okay, and especially it's Jupiter's ninth aspect. You will see that this person as a child will be very angry, but then what happens is, because Mars progresses, Mars has Jupiter right next to it, they suddenly find a teacher, mentor, which could be a family member, father, mother, or an actual teacher who helps them control and understand their anger. And their guidance then leads them for the rest of their life to be able to use anger in a proper way and to be able to, understand when not to do something and do something. This is how we understand then each planet. And this is actually is all the astrology. Okay. Like, for example, if Mars is in Aries in Ashwini, you will see a person will love going to any kind of like sporting event, fighting event. They will love reading books on all kinds of different techniques of exercises. Okay. Mars goes into Bharani, one will be interested in rules of life. How do I follow certain strict regimes and rules to, like, this is going to be a very disciplined Mars and Bharani. They will create their own rules, regulations, policies around them. Okay. It's like self-inflicted rules and policies. And because of that, this person becomes very successful because they do not, budge from their policies. Mars, let's say, goes into Mriksira. You will see such person will always have a routine to go to the gym every day or go on walks every day. And they will always go to a very similar place. Their energy will always be spent on similar routine things in their daily life. Mars in Chitra, at one point one will learn how to use certain weapons. Mars in Chitra, one will always develop one very powerful skill. They may have a lot of skills, but they will develop one very powerful skill that other people may not have or develop. And they will always use that, and they will always use that skill very last to achieve what they want to. Okay. Mars and Rohini and Kritika, they can be very lustful. A lot of lustful energy would be in there. Okay. So this is how you want to understand, these energies of Mars and how to look at things from Mars. For example, if Mars is in Aries, 8th from Mars is Scorpio, right? So 6th from Mars becomes your debt. 8th from Mars has to be transformed. One has one thing and then it completely switches and becomes something else. So there's going to be transformation, 8th from Mars. And then depending upon which house Mars is in, you can see without even dashas that becoming activated. Okay, if Mars is in, let's say, the 3rd house, then 45th year, 8th from Mars will become active. Okay. It's not going to be, okay, so, and this is going to be that point, again, you have to use progression. It's not like every 12 years it's going to happen. There has to be this progression of Mars, and then seeing these exaltation and debilitation of Mars. See, even if you look at Mars, exaltation, Mars finds this absolute Digbala in the 10th house. Okay, and it's like you're taking the wild energy of Mars, which this anger, Angarakaya, Kuja, you put it in the 10th house of the world and the jungle. This is where it feels the most comfortable. This is where the anger is used in the right direction, actually. Mars loses its direction in the 4th house, in Cancer. Okay, and this is where Mars then becomes confused about, why am I here? What am I supposed to be? They feel like, even though they're doing something, they feel like, why am I doing this? Because now, remember, 4th house is Cancer. Cancer is Rahu, because Rahu is the north node. Okay, this is something I explained even in my academy back in 2018. Rahu actually considers Cancer's Multrikon sign Ketu with Capricorn. So here's now you have that Rahu moon energy upon Mars. So this is where then once person is confused, not knowing what they're doing, then they get frustrated. Then that frustration comes up. Okay, but you have to also understand the progression too of Mars, just like any other planet. But that also depends upon the degree, the start of the degree. Different progression will happen at different degrees. Okay. So anyway, guys, just remember, I'm going to be discussing this and more on KRSchannel, because I've already put in Secrets of Ascendance there. And I'm going to put like 3-4 more parts there. Probably today too, I will put something there for the next ascendant that I'm going to show. Okay, on there. So log on there. And of course, within 10-15 days, you will see my Vastu lessons becoming activated on Maga Vedic Astrology Academy. All right. So we'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.